So What, Now What? I am the Dean of Education for the College Coaching Program. My name is Megan Penley Pickett. Many of your faces and names look really familiar to me, so I'm so excited to have you with us. I have my phone going as well in case I drop it, and so it's so funny to like see myself moving over here and over there in my office. So I'm so excited to have all of you with us with so many changes that are happening right now in K-12 education, as well as at the college and university level, specifically in admissions. And that's what we're here to talk about, is really what does that admissions process look like for our juniors, our rising seniors. So for most folks on June 9th, they're probably seniors in high school at this point or have made that transition. If not, that's really who we're talking to, is that transitioning group. And we're also talking to our seniors or folks who have just graduated or will be graduating that have already gone through that admissions process and are trying to figure out, what do I do in the fall, right? So we're going to talk somewhat about that. I am joined this evening by a very special guest, a former colleague of mine, a current friend of mine. Her name is Rachel Ballos. She is an admissions officer and director of communications at the University of Denver. So she is here to give us her perspective on the admissions process. She and I have worked together for more years than maybe some of our seniors have been around. And so she's here, and she's really, a really great resource to have on here to really talk about what is happening in the world of admissions and answer your questions on that as well. So we are very excited to have you, Rachel. Thank you so much for joining.
Happy to be here.
Great. All right, folks. Well, I am going to get started. I am recording. We are doing well there. I'm going to share my screen. Brief slides tonight, because really what we have found with this particular presentation, we did it a couple of weeks ago, but what we have really found with this presentation is really where it gets interesting is, one, when Rachel gets to talk and it's not me, and two, when you all get to ask your specific questions. So let's get into that. I always wish there was a better way for me to not have to wait till this bar goes away to hit slideshow. So if anybody knows what that is. Anyhow, all right, so here is, I'm going to turn my video off so I am less distracted. Here we go. So again, you are at the Heartland Institute of Financial Education's College Coaching Program presentation of COVID and College, So What, Now What? We do have a new website, just want to point that out for folks. Maybe you are new to finding out information about the Heartland College Coaching Program. Maybe you want to find out more information, but we do, or you've been with us for quite a while. But collegecoaching.org is our new website that's dedicated to our college coaching program versus our other website, which is still up. So if you have that bookmarked, you can get some information on there. But this is the website that we are keeping updated. And this one is dedicated specifically to the college coaching program, where the other one is embedded with our other financial services, financial educators, those types of things. So this is collegecoaching.org is where it's at. So really what we're going to talk about today, and I talked a little bit about when we were sharing or not sharing my screen there, but really it's a little bit of an overview of what we know, which is not that much information, but we will share with you what we know and what we've heard so far. And again, we're talking about that junior, rising senior, and senior moving into graduation focus, and then we'll definitely leave time for a question and answer. Some of these pieces specifically that we are talking about in that junior part of it really is going to make a difference potentially for our underclassmen as well. Obviously, what we're dealing with right now with it's in reaction to COVID-19, the coronavirus, and the social distancing and safer at home, stay at home orders, depending on what part of the country you're in, what's that called. We're seeing a lot of changes, and right now what we're seeing is a lot of, this is what we're going to do for now. They may not be long-term changes, but we may see some of these changes go into effect for the future, right? So when our rising junior, so our sophomore into junior year, June's always a funky time to label those students, but for folks who are going into their sophomore or junior year, some of these changes may be in effect and will be more of quote unquote the norm at that point, but right now we don't know that. So it's good information to have. And like we're going to say a lot during this webinar is when you have a question, reach out to the specific organization or entity that you have a question about. If it's a school, if it's a testing center, if it's a college or university, if it's our coaching program, reach out and ask the question. Things are changing so quickly in some places, and in other places they aren't, and they're remaining stable. But we want to make sure, and they're going to look different from college to college, high school to high school, state to state, all of those. So we want to make sure that, yes, here's the broad information that we're able to provide for you this evening, but we want to stress that this is by no means covers every college and university in the US, every high school system. We can't make that claim, but these are the things we kind of know to be true and questions we encourage to ask you and or encourage you to ask. And so on the note of questions, we definitely want you to ask questions of our guest speaker, Rachel. She is very knowledgeable in this area, not only in higher education, but specifically around college admissions, and is very knowledgeable, is very well tuned into what's happening across the country, involved in organizations that work with other admissions counselors and offices of admission. Boy, I'm a little better in the morning, folks. My tongue is a little more tied this evening. So, so ask your questions to Rachel because she'll be able to answer them. So let's jump in. So I always think that this is a funny slide, even though I made it, because this is the what we know. I'm doing air quotes, a what we know slide. What we know is that education has changed significantly. We have had sweeping changes in K-12 education, with students remote learning, e-learning, taking significant breaks off, huge changes to interbaccalaureate, to how AP exams were run and the materials that were covered, what is happening for the SAT and ACT entrance exams, those test dates and what's happening around that. So we've seen a lot of those changes, and we're unsure of what the fall is going to bring. Fall for some of you may start in August, some of you may start September, October, we're not quite sure. We don't know if students will be going back to school. We don't know what that will look like. We also don't know what that will look like on the college or university side. If any of you are watching any of that information or have students who are in that age group that would be thinking about that, colleges and universities haven't, a lot of them have not made those decisions yet. Some of them have, on that they will be strictly e-learning or will do a hybrid or something along those lines, but we just don't know what's happening in the fall. So this is the time to ask questions. We don't want to just sit back and say, well, we do have to wait and see at some level, but when it comes to education, when it comes to, oh, I hope somebody else is going to tell me, I really say that when you have questions, you need to ask that. One of the positives that comes out of this, or that's in tandem with these changes, is that our college admissions officers, offices of admissions, entrance, financial aid, depending on what that's called at the different colleges and universities, they are clearly aware of this because everyone in the world is experiencing this at some level. So it's not simply happening in a particular region or in a particular state or anything along those lines. So that, although it may not feel positive, the ripple effect is that our college admissions officers, as well as their departments, are fully aware of what's happening, and they've modified their processes and requirements. They are very available for students to talk to. They are pushing out information, as my director of communications friend on here can attest to. They are pushing out information not only to students who have already been accepted and have deposited at this point, but to students who are thinking about coming, right, to those prospective students, to what that looks like. And they are changing what those what their processes and procedures look like for the outreach piece, and also what the requirements may be for what that admissions process looks like. So that's what we know, and it's going to, again, look a little bit different from state to date on when students may go back to school, may not go back to school in person, and what that looks like. And so it does change daily. And so there's a lot of places that you're going to want to kind of bookmark or check in with every other day or every couple of days to find out some information. We want you to do that in a way that feels good, that doesn't feel like, okay, well, it's 2 o'clock now and I just checked, maybe I'll check again at 3 o'clock. Changes aren't happening quite that quickly, but if you're keeping up to date on things that are mattering to you at that moment, what are admissions deadlines, what's going on with the SAT or ACT entrance exams. If you're checking in on that, or you have alerts maybe sent to your email or something along those lines, we just want to make sure that you are keeping up to date in the best way possible. So again, here we are, junior heading into senior year focus. Really, and we've done some webinars around this, our coaches are talking with our students around this. How can you spend your time? I guarantee that admissions officers, and Rachel can answer her thought on this, when and if they ask you, and I'm assuming that that will be a part of either an admissions interview, it'll be part of the essays, those types of things. They're going to say, how did you spend your time during quarantine? If you say, well, I hid under my bed the whole time, or I played video games the whole time, or I did nothing, that's not really going to add to your admissions profile, right? We're also not saying go to the extreme and fill every single quote unquote extra minute that you have, but you can really be thoughtful about how you're spending your time. What type of research are you doing? How are you keeping your studies up? What are you doing for self-care? I think that's a really big piece of it. Really, when we're talking about mental health, mental wellness, self-care, those types of ideas. What are you doing? What are you doing to keep connected with friends and family, with if you have a job or an internship, a volunteer organization, your student organizations? Those are the types of things you're going to want to think about as you've been spending your time and continue to do so as social distancing parameters shift and change, but you're going to want to think about that. As well as start preparing your application materials, right? You're going into your senior year, and so the applications are going to start being due sometime right between August and November, depending upon the deadline that you're focusing on, whether you're looking at early application, early decision, or regular admission. So think about what that looks like. Prepare your application material. So go online, find out what is necessary for the schools that you are thinking of, so you can use this time to your benefit. If you need to test prep, if you need to get in on preparing for the SAT or ACT, how can you do that in a social distancing, in a responsible way? So figuring that part of that out as well. There's going to be free online things. They have started having classes through different organizations where you can take that online, but in a live, more focused way. So think about that, as well as your essays. That is going to be a huge piece of the puzzle when you are applying for college or university in the fall. Because some of these pieces are changing, testing is going optional at some places, the ACT or SAT, so that if that's an optional place or they're doing away with it altogether, that may not be a piece of the puzzle, so they're going to rely more heavily on your GPA, your supplemental materials, as well as your essay. So really think about that essay. What do you want to talk about? Maybe go online and find essay prompts from in the past if they're not available yet for that. You can go online, you know, for those specific schools. You can also go online and look at what the previous common application essay prompts were. You can start thinking about those, so you're not like, well, get it done tonight and turn it in tomorrow. That's not how you want to do your college admission essays. You will need to be prepared to apply this fall. We've seen some shifting in deadlines around deposits, a little bit around admission, getting all of your application materials in for this current class, for the class of 2020. I don't think we'll be seeing that as much because it's a little bit as it's less necessary, if you will, in the fall for the class of 2021. So be prepared to apply this fall. The worst that happens is you're prepared and a deadline gets pushed back, and you can still apply on time. Again, reach out to those specific schools for up-to-date information. Just because your brother is going to state college this year, and his deadline was X date, doesn't mean that it's going to be the same for you or for a friend or somebody's dog's walker's cousin, right? Like that's a lot of how our students think. Well, I heard about this, somebody was fine, they had an extended deadline, so I'm sure that I will too. Ugh. Reach out, get that information. Go on virtual tours. Most, if not all, colleges and universities are not hosting in-person tours right now. So go online. You can go to the specific college or university website. They have a lot of information on there. There's a number of other kind of clearinghouse sites that exist that you can, I think it's Your Tours or yourvirtualtours.com. That's got a number of college and university virtual tours in one spot. So go on, get as much information about that. Talk to student ambassadors, reach out to the college admission officer that's assigned to your region or to your high school. If you're not sure who it is, contact them, get in there, find out, give them a call the admissions office. Hi, my name is Megan. I live in Maryville, Indiana, which is where I grew up, right? Who is the admissions officer for my high school, right? They're going to ask you some questions and they're going to route you to the right person. It's that simple. Don't just send a text and don't just send an email, right? Give them a call. You can also send an email, but we want to make sure that you are reaching out and getting as much information as possible. So as you're narrowing down and making your decisions on where to apply, you are using the same type of information that we have seen be helpful in the past. Rachel, what am I missing, or what would you like to add to this big fire hose of information I just sprayed at people?
Yeah, so first, Megan, can you give me the A-OK that you can hear me?
A-OK, I can totally.
Okay, great. I have my new fancy headphones on, and I feel like I'm still struggling to make sure all my technology is working.
Yeah,
so echoing all of this, right? So coming from, the other side of the table of being in admissions, being a part of the conversations on these decisions, it's exactly this. So we are planning on things moving forward in a very normal and traditional way for next year in terms of applying in the fall and our dates and our deadlines. We already are test optional, so that makes it easy for us. But yes, asking that question and connecting to make sure if testing is or is not going to be a requirement or something that you are needing to stress about. I love the idea for a junior heading into senior year to look at this summer and look at the fact that it's different than any other summer that they've had, and how do they use that time. And it is a great time to start playing around with the essay and doing it in a little bit more of a relaxed, casual way of I'm going to sit and I'm going to work on it a little bit and I'm going to take a break from it and I can come back to it and I can have somebody edit it. You got the time, and so to really take advantage of that. And the piece that I think I stress so much with the students and the families that I directly work with who are applying to the University of Denver is around the stress of admissions and the fact that you add in to the world that we're living in right now, the stress is huge. And so for a student, spending that time to think, okay, well, how do I spend my time? How do I make sure that I'm, making my resume look good? At the same time, if indeed the student has spent the summer hiding under the bed, okay, like talk about it. Tell us what is going on and why you've struggled and how you've struggled and how you're getting through it. And that's a huge way of focusing on an essay or telling your story, of being honest and transparent and showing a college, hey, I can get through anything because I'm getting through this and I'm struggling, but I'm not giving up. And here are the tools that I've learned or how I've learned about myself to have more resiliency and to have grit, these sort of terms that you hear a lot about, that's what college is looking for, is someone with resiliency and grit. Well, that's what this time is all about. So finding ways to write about it, to journal about it, to blog about it. So even if it's not around, oh, I'm writing my essay about this, but just starting to jot down thoughts and experiences that may turn into something down the line. And that would be for a sophomore even as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Great, thank you. Yeah, I love that idea of using what's going on, right? We don't want students to feel like they have to fit into a particular box of this is what I did, during quarantine, or really for any student at any point in time, that they have to fit into a certain box. But how do you tell that story in a way that's authentic to you? That's going to help you as a student figure out if you're a good fit for that particular culture at that college or university, and it's going to give the same opportunity to the admissions officers that are figuring out, is this a good fit for them? Is this, are they coming to the right place? Because, and Rachel and I have talked about this before, and I'm sure she'll mention it again, but it's just as much about, is this a good fit for me as a student? And our admissions officers and the folks who work in admissions and build that class and have a hand in that, they also want to make sure that it's a good fit for that student, so they're going to thrive there, that they are going to graduate from there, that they're going to have the best experience possible. And so this whole admissions process is a piece of figuring that part out. So we want to make sure that what you're putting together is authentic, and that you're finding the information that works for you. Just because big brother or big sister or mom and dad went to, I'm from Indiana. I live in Colorado now, but I'm from Indiana, right? And so just because somebody went to Indiana University, right, 40,000 people or something like that, doesn't mean that St. Mary of the Woods College isn't the right fit for me, right? 300 undergraduate students. So I didn't go to either one of those, so I am not promoting either one, but those are just two examples on a continuum, right? So again, making sure that it's a good fit for you. All right. And I think, you know what, I'm going to actually check really quick, because I think I saw a question come in on the chat that would make sense. No, I'm going to answer that at the end. I thought it was about something else. Okay, I'll make sure that I get to any questions that come in the chat. I'll get to those at the end. I thought it was about the other screen. So that was really our juniors in transitioning into senior year. This slide and what we're going to talk about here is really our graduating seniors, students who have gone through the process, have made their decisions, have made their deposits, or in that process at some point. I think the majority of people who are deciding that college or university is for them this year, they have gone through that process. Clearly, when they applied, things looked very different on college and university campuses, as well as in their own neighborhoods. And so some of the questions that we have been asked at the Heartland Institute and with our college planning coaches, from U.S. consultants, from prospective and current families, is, I've gone through this, the process, right? I've done what I needed to do. I've been accepted. I've made my decisions. What do I do now? What does that look like? It's sort of that should I stay or should I go question. Now, the underlying piece that I want to share with everyone here, I'll probably say it a couple of times, but I want you to know that this is truly what I think, is that this is a very personal decision. This is going to be based on you and your family, you being the student, and your family's how we're feeling about safety, how we're feeling about health, how you're feeling about location and what the school is doing, all of those things. So there is no one blanket answer for anyone. Much like when you were deciding to go to school and what I was just talking about with FIT, there's no one right answer for everyone that's going to fit. So you're going to have to really dig in and get more information so you can make the best decision for you. Some of the things to think about if you are in that position of deciding, do I go? Do I not go? And go can be, that can mean a couple of different things right now. Go could mean actually physically go if that's the option that school comes up with for the fall. It could be, do I attend online if that's the option that they come up with, or any variation. I guess the only other variation, right, is a hybrid of, I'm thinking through the K-12 lens right now, but we are seeing some schools that are looking at a hybrid. But if you're a first year student, and you're moving onto campus, what does that look like, right? So that's really the question that we're thinking through right now. So some factors to consider as you're thinking through that is, what is the school's plan? Now it's June 9th. Schools are starting to make those plans with the knowledge that those can change based on CDC recommendation, health and safety recommendations, both federally as well as in their particular state, and in some cases in that particular county. I know that out here in Colorado, the counties have been given a lot of say on what can happen in their districts and things like that. And so thinking through that. So some colleges and universities have made some decisions right now, knowing that that can change. So finding out what is their specific plan. How in the past, really in the last 3 months, have they handled online or e-learning? What does that look like? And you can find that out. You can call your admissions offices. You can call specific departments. You can potentially talk with some of the student ambassadors that are going to be working in the admissions office or something adjacent to that. So find out how they've handled that. Some schools were really prepared for that and were able to handle that. Some schools were not prepared for that and were still able to handle that. And some schools fell in the middle, whether they were prepared or not, they didn't handle it well. So you get to decide if it's well or not what other people think, right? And find out, you know, because a lot of schools did this really quickly. And so I think they did the best that they could. And what is their plan for the fall? If e-learning or online learning, remote learning is going to be a part of it, how is it going to look differently to address some of those issues that school may have seen this spring? Or how are they going to keep going with the successes that they've had? Find out what your housing options are. If you are going to a college or university where you are living on campus, find out what those housing options are. I know, or I'm pretty sure at the institution where Rachel is, you know, folks they're thinking about, how do we create only single occupancy? What does that look like? Does that change the cost? I can't speak for that particular university on those pieces, but I do know from the executive director of housing that is something that they are thinking about. And so think about how that will affect you. What does that mean? If you're deciding maybe it's not the time to go, what options do you have on getting those deposits back? How does that have a financial implication on what you've already paid? How do you defer that? So these are questions to ask, and specifically around that financial aid piece, if you've gotten any scholarships, grants, merit dollars, income-based dollars, those types of things specifically from the university, and anything federally, statewide, you know, independent scholarships, things like that. You're going to want to talk to those entities. If I decide to defer, if I decide, I'm going to jump out really quick and make sure that we are muting. Let's keep ourselves muted if we can. All right, I'll jump back in. I wish I could do it from that screen.
So I'll just actually jump in as you're getting back here and fill some time, and just again echo that this is real and true. Be in touch with us. Like, we want to hear from you. We want to answer questions. We would much rather have these concerns be presented earlier than later, right? That students aren't coming to us the week before, you know, classes are starting saying, I don't think I can do this, and here are all my questions. A lot of schools are also, and I'm speaking very much from my hat and at the University of Denver, we're trying to be proactive. We are trying to push out information to our deposited students, our deposited parents, webinars, virtual experiences, right? So at this point, a virtual tour probably isn't what a deposited student needs, but what does it look like to be in an online class? Let's do a sample class for you. Let's get you engaged in that way. Give examples of what this institution is doing and how we're thriving in that. But asking questions and being open to that, I will be a broken record on that one, of just let us help you, because that's really what we want to be doing.
Absolutely. And if you have a question, ask it, folks. Like, get in there, call them, email them. You know, in talking with Rachel and other admissions folks, like, their time looks different. Now, I'm not saying they are kicking back in their office and having nothing better to do, right?
No.
That is not what's happening, because they're at home, right? Like the rest of us. But they aren't necessarily planning for their travel for their fall. They're not traveling in ways that they were before. So their time looks different, and they want to be in touch with you. They want you to ask those questions so they can give you pointed answers and get you the resources that you need to make that decision. If this fall is the best time for you to start at XYZ University, then they want you to do that, and I want that for you as well. If this fall is not the right time for you at XYZ University, or to go to school at all, that's what we want for you. I would say, here's my caveat, is that if you have been accepted and this has been your plan and you decide not to attend this fall, what are you going to do? I don't have the right answer for you. I can tell you that gap years look differently than they have in the past, because gap years have often, not always, but they've often involved travel or study abroad for an intense amount of time, really focusing on language, focusing on a particular field that you want to get more in-depth experience in, maybe an internship or a job. There's a word that I'm looking for that I can't think of right now, but like kind of an intensive experience that you would be doing. Those options are limited this year for the same reason that our education has been limited on the in-person piece of it. And so really thinking about what is your plan. And if you're going to be remaining at home and engaging in online, how do you want to do that? What does that look like? So really be intentional about that. It can be really overwhelming. So have those conversations with trusted people. Maybe it's your admissions officer, maybe it's your family, hopefully it's your Heartland coach, if you have one, you know, to really work through what's the right decision for me, and here are some things to think about. And there's probably a lot more factors to consider based on your personal experiences and your personal situation that aren't up on your screen here. But again, you're really going to want to think this through, and you're probably going to want to start thinking about this not in August or September, you know, depending. I know the University of Denver goes back to school on Labor Day. Some other schools are going to start mid-August. Others are going to start, you know, a little bit later than that. So you don't want to start thinking about that a week or two beforehand. You want to start getting this information and starting the conversation now. You don't have to make your decision right now. But you also don't want to be so overwhelmed with information that it's analysis or paralysis by analysis, right? Like, oh, there's so much and I didn't know, and if I had only known X, right? So so get out there and start asking those questions. Other things you want to add to that? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that I would add as you're asking questions to the schools, if taking a gap year is part of what you're thinking, also think about it in the sense of, okay, school X, what if I come and it doesn't work? I am really struggling, either because I'm online and it's not working for me, or I'm in person, but I'm missing home, or I have a parent who needs me back home now, you know, just the intricacies of life. I mean, that's any given year or time, but especially right now, I think it's a good question to ask the school up front. What is the process? What are the policies if I come and then I need to leave and I need to take some time off? What does that look like? Get some suggestions and advice from the school, what those resources look like.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I actually use that because I know we had talked about this previously, use that in a conversation with a couple of families earlier this week as they were trying to decide that. And I'm like, you got to call and ask because again, college or university A is going to look different than college or university B on how they're going to handle things. Doesn't make one right or wrong, but you want to have the information so you're making these informed decisions. Oh, well, that's it. Not that we're done with this. I always forget that this is such a short slideshow. But because again, there's so much that goes into it, and we want to be able to make sure that we are answering your questions. So for those of you again who I'm going to leave this up for a little bit. So, but this is how you can get a hold of us if you have questions for me. Again, collegecoaching.org. You can send an email to hypecpp@hype-usa.org. Give us a call, 303-597-0197. We are located in the Rocky Mountains, so it is 6:40-ish right now, Mountain Daylight Time, or I can never remember what the D stands for at this point in time. But so just so you know, we're open, or our phone lines are open from 8:30 to 4:30 every day. So let's see what kind of questions, and you can also unmute yourself and ask your question, and I'll try to read them. Yes, apparently you're just watching me read it, so that is not that exciting. So let me jump out of here, and maybe it'll be a little more engaging to actually watch me read it. It's very exciting to watch me read. So couple of questions that came on. Jose is saying yes to virtual tours. Yes, we love that. We think it's a great way to get that information. So we have a question. These days, students already have an ACT scores like 35 or 36, leadership in multiple clubs, participated. How do they really set themselves apart from the other kids with similar experiences? Rachel, from your point of view as an admissions officer, how do people stand out, or what does that process look like?
Yeah, so I think that there are a few ways to answer this question. And I think that the first one is the important conversation to have with students about the schools they're applying to begin with, right? There are a handful of the very, very competitive selective schools that a profile like this is every student who's applying. But that is a very, very small minority of schools out there. You know, the average acceptance rate is like 70%. So most schools in DU lands, we're usually at about 50%, and we're considered a selective school. So making sure that the students are applying to an array of schools so that every single school they're applying to isn't in this boat. Because for us, we are in the mission to admit students. And so we aren't putting quotas on, oh, we can only have this number of students with this profile or something of that nature. If they've got it, we want them, and we're going to admit them. Now, with that being said, what are we looking for outside of sort of the check boxes that are mentioned here? It is engagement with us, how interested they are in us. We are going to pay attention to those things. I think schools are pretty open and honest these days about that. You know, technology is both a blessing and a scary curse sometimes of, we know that you've opened an email or you've clicked on an email. We have engagement scores. We have tracking ability of, did you come visit us? Did we go to your high school? Now, today's world looks different. We're tracking virtual visit signups, right? So if a student signs up on our website to be a part of a Zoom call, we're tracking that. We're going to pay attention. Is this student engaged with us and interested in us? So if there's a #1 school on a student's list, have them be in touch with the school, have them engaged, have them attending whatever is out there that the school is putting out there, because ultimately down the line, that's not a game. This is truly about fit. So we're making sure that a student is interested in us and that everything that we're offering and we're sharing is speaking to them, right? The more information they know about us, the better off that they're going to be to make that decision down the line. The other thing that I would mention is what we've talked a bit in relation to essays, is an essay that is honest and is sharing personal information in a way that's comfortable, right? We're not asking students to pretend that we're their therapist, but we want it to be real. We want it to be about real things. And having students, you can tell when you sit down, or I can tell at least when I sit down and read an essay and say, wow, this student is sharing themselves with me and sharing why they are going to succeed in college and why this is the right fit for them. Those kind of stories and that kind of essay is only going to help a student set themselves apart in the midst of a pool of very, very highly competitive students.
Great, thank you so much for that. So we have a question on here. I know this discussion is about schools, but what about the organizations on campus like Greek or the band or sports? How will they play a part for scholarships, if any at all? That's going to be dependent upon, and Rachel, feel free to weigh in. As a former director of student engagement, I can tell you from my standpoint, right, that's going to be very dependent upon one, the school, and then the organization's relationship with that school. And so from a fraternity, sorority, Greek, standpoint, there's going to be some organizations that are going to host scholarships and things like that. If you are interested in going into a specific area like the arts, like band, like a sport, they may have some scholarships at lots of levels, maybe at the club level, at the D1 or D3, those types of things. So that's going to look a little bit different for every school, and dependent upon, again, how those organizations are affiliated with the school. So again, that's going to be one of the pieces that that you're going to want to find out about once a student is accepted into a school. What does that look like for those local organizations or clubs and things like that? There are some organizations, some, again, fraternity and sorority, that they're going to have some national scholarships that exist regardless of where you go, and you're not required to be a member of those organizations. There's not a lot of those. I can tell you that that was my world for about 20 years. So there's not a lot, not that that's negative at all, but they're also, because there's some rules around membership and things like that. So, and when we're looking at what does the fall look like, so this may be straying from the question a little bit, but those organizations that are housed on a campus are more likely than not going to be following the rules and regulations that that school is following. Now, you're going to have some state schools where organizations aren't quite affiliated in the same way. So you're going to want to find that out. What does membership look like? Are they still taking membership and hosting clubs and organizations and things like that while school isn't in session in the same way? So you can ask those questions. But by and large, we're going to see those student organizations, sports clubs, fraternities, sororities, those types of things fall in line with what the colleges and universities are doing health and safety wise.
Yeah, I would just echo that as well. It's that horrible answer of it depends.
Right. The truth is that there are some things out there that do exist. So check into them, and then if they have any requirements, right, of like being in, on campus and things like that, you'll definitely want to check that out. So there's a question from Wendy on here. Can you talk some how to prepare for junior year students for the coming year? I'm assuming we're talking, and Wendy, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. We're talking about our juniors that are going into senior year, or our sophomores going into junior. So I'll talk about junior going into senior year first. And I think, and Rachel, again, feel free to weigh in. I think that really, and what we tell our juniors, regardless of any pandemics or not, right, is that this is the time where you want to be making the decisions on what schools you're going to be applying for. Some students at this point in time, they haven't made that list. They haven't thought about it. They thought maybe they're going to go down the street or go to the whichever school. That's okay. I'm not here to panic you, because that's not going to help you move forward or take action at all. But what you need to do is really take this time, or what I would suggest is to take this time, create your list of schools that you're interested in. The three things that I think are really most important are, and there's lots of pieces that come under this, right? But it's going to be, look, I'm like, they're so important that I forgot them when I am talking to 75 people. The three things that are important, right, is you want to make sure that that school has your major. You want to make sure that it has the career path trajectory that you're thinking about. And if you're not sure what that is, I would suggest that you start thinking about that. Lots of students change their major, but you want to be focused. You want to be able to graduate on time, right, which is 4 years. So you want to go in with a major, or pretty quickly able to declare a major when you have that ability. So you want to make sure that that school has your major. You also want to make sure that it's in your financial range. They can be stretch schools. They can, and we really talk about applying to 1 to 2 stretch schools, 2 to 3 of those schools that fit all of your criteria, and then one safety school, right, that hits all of your criteria. Maybe it's not exactly where you want to go, but it will get you to where you want to be, right? And so sometimes in those stretch schools, that financial piece is going to be in there. We don't want them all of the schools that you're applying to be in that stretch area, because once you're accepted into that, how are we going to pay for that? We also don't want you graduating with $100,000 and $200,000 in debt. So really think about what that financial piece is. And then the third piece is fit. So it's what Rachel and I have been talking about. We're real student life people, right? And so that is where we come from, is that we want you to go to school. We want you to thrive and be challenged in a way that you can move forward in your life and broaden your horizons, and that you're going to graduate from that institution. That says a lot when you graduate from that institution. It says that you made a good decision, right? And people can change institutions. That doesn't mean it's a bad decision. And you're being good stewards of your time and money. When you stay at one single institution, it makes it easier to move between majors and things like that. So look at fit. We're talking location. Is it a single sex institution? Is it a Big Ten? Is it a religiously affiliated institution? Is it big? Is it small? Is it all of the things, right? Do you live on campus? Is it rural? Is it metro? Is it all of the opposites that you can think of, right? That go into fit. So that's really what we're talking about. So that's how I would suggest just that little bit of information, right, on how to prepare students that are going into their senior year. We want you by August to know where you're going to be applying, because you're going to need to start applying maybe in August, usually October, November. Those are going to come. We're going to see a little bit, but by Thanksgiving, your applications are in, and you want to have the time to work on those essays like Rachel was talking about. Get your letters of recommendation from the right individuals, and not, sending an email at the 11th hour. Hey, coach so-and-so, can you send me a letter of recommendation? And they're like, no, it's what? Or they don't check their email, and you're like, but I sent you an email at 11:59, right? So you want time to prepare those materials, and spend time thinking about what you want that end goal to be with the career piece, so you can start making some informed decisions around your career. Around your major. So again, just that little bit of information on how to prepare, but that's what I would say on how to do that. So
yeah, the only other thing that I would add, and I don't know if this is exactly the question or not, but I'm also thinking just like what I tend to share with students who are stressing about senior year academically or the extracurriculars, like what do I need to be thinking about now that is going to go in my application? What is the school going to see in senior year versus not, right? Like if you're applying in August, senior year hasn't even started yet. And so I think that's part of that process right now as well, is putting that resume together, putting those things together, looking and seeing, are there gaps? Is there something that, I would have actually liked to do, during my senior year? Because you can talk about that of, what are your plans during your senior year as you're listing out your extracurriculars. You can say, these are the clubs and the orgs, the things that I'm doing in senior year. So being a little bit strategic about that and thinking through, all right, I got one more year. I still have one full year of high school to do things, to get involved. What do I want that to look like? And how can I reflect that in my application to the, universities that you're applying to?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And Wendy has a follow-up question. What is for sophomore to junior year? And I think it's a lot of the things that we've talked about. I think Rachel makes a really good point on, as we start to put any student who is involved in our coaching program, from day one, we say, well, let's start putting together a resume. Even if you only have a few things to put on it, it's so much easier to put on what you did in 8th and 9th and 10th grade when you're closer to that age than even when you're a senior and you're like, what was that project I did? It had a moon in it. I don't remember, that kind of thing. And so being able to start creating that, and so putting that on. But to Rachel's really great point is, if you're sophomore into junior year, you still have 2 more years of high school. So if you are seeing gaps, or if you're seeing really that you're heavy in one area and you would like to be more well-rounded, I don't know that that's really the right term, but to have some broader experiences that not only, I hate to tell people, and I would never tell people, do something to just put it on your resume. I think that is a colossal waste of time. A colossal waste of time. What I think is important is if you have experiences, one, you're going to have a richer high school experience. You're going to meet more people. You're going to meet more peers. You're going to meet more adults that are in your life, whether they are advisors or volunteers or coaches or something along those lines that are going to help shape you. And you're going to have meaningful things to talk about in those essays, on those materials, and in any interviews you have. Don't do it just for that. That is a benefit of having those richer experiences. So if you're going, into your junior year or freshman into sophomore year and looking at, okay, what have I done so far? What experiences would I like to get? How do I want to? Do I want to get deeper into my art? Do I want to learn an additional foreign language? Do I want to go into a STEM camp or do something virtually online? I'm seeing these ads all the time, for virtual camps right now. How do I get involved with that to follow a passion area, right? That's what I would suggest doing, in addition to that career research on what do we want to do. And really, when you're an underclassman and you're thinking about your career, it's a great time to get hands-on experience. Maybe I think I want to be a nurse. Maybe you should talk to a nurse, right? I had a student years and years ago when I was at the University of Denver with Rachel, and I was talking to, and she was like, yeah, I was going to be a nurse, but then I fainted at the sight of blood. And I'm like, probably would have been helpful a couple of years ago to figure that part out, right? And so we want students to get that hands-on experience, talk to people in the field, find out what jobs exist. It's not just a business person, a fire person, a police officer, a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, right? Like there's more, or an astronaut, right? Maybe somebody wants to be an astronaut. And so like there's more than those jobs that exist, and we're seeing more and more of those change every day. So talk to people who are in those fields. What is it about? Do research on what that is. If you're a part of our program, we utilize the Cooter platform. It's an assessment, and it gives you a direction on careers to start researching. It doesn't pigeonhole you. You still have access to all of them. It gives you a place to start, because if you're like, what jobs can I do? And you're like, your computer screen blows up, and 5 seconds later, your brain blows up, right? You're just like, I don't know how to do this. Start thinking about that, talking to people, figuring out, is this job going to be there when I graduate in, I'm not even going to do the math, in 2030 or whatever our freshmen are going to be graduating, right? So start doing that research as well as pulling together your materials. See, give me a platform, people, and I will just talk and talk at you and give you opinion. So.
Well, the problem is I'm the same way. So like, we're
Great.
going to just keep talking, because I have so many things to say about that. Like,
Great.
just so many ideas. Yeah, I can't tell you the number of high school students that I meet with, and they open up our, fancy profile piece and look at our majors and are like, you can study that? Like, oh my God. So I think that students tend in K-12, they're very focused. As you said, there's like these 7 career paths, and that's what you got to choose from. And the reality is it's so much more broad than that. So I think having the students to start in whatever way, whether it's an assessment or even just going on to their favorite college's website to look at what the majors are, just to have some fun. I think I'm bouncing around a little bit, but I think that freshman to sophomore to junior, they are freshmen and sophomores. They should be having fun. They should be enjoying high school. They should just be with their friends and just be enjoying life. And yes, these experiences are going to influence and make an impact later on when they put it together onto a resume. But if a student's able to truly live just in that moment and not always thinking about the anxiety of college, it's very hard for our society to live that way. But I think that's kind of one of my personal passions, and that I see students stress so much. And just go and enjoy. And you know what? Yes, over the summer, sleep in a little bit and go and do some research on this, and go and play video games. And, you could do both, and to just have that true child experience, because a freshman and sophomore is still a child, and growing and developing. So there was something else that I thought of, and I was off on that tangent. Yeah, I know. So we joke around at the University of Denver a lot, especially within our sort of computer science and our STEM fields. And we say that we're preparing students and educating students for jobs that do not exist yet. And I think that that's a really interesting place to be in. And especially, again, as a freshman or a sophomore is looking into their academic interests and their career path, the reality is that they may end up in a career field that does not legitimately exist yet. And so it's just early on teasing out, what do you like to do? What do you lose yourself in? And I think that's where some of those assessments can be super helpful to start getting students to think about it in that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, Megan.
Oh, yes. Hi, Chinny.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great, great. Hey, you know what? I just wanted to say thank you so much for, getting this happening. I've got a good number of parents have actually joined this evening. As it is, what I say is, as it is a college, preparation, college planning is kind of a complicated, a journey. But in addition to that, we have this COVID-19, right? So this is definitely added so much of unknown in the whole journey. But I totally appreciate Megan in terms of the Heartland Institute, and Rachel. You are awesome. You know what? You actually, there's a question, there's an answer, right? You're actually giving the, the whole idea about, how one should actually go around and then, start planning, from sophomore to junior or junior to senior, or they are senior, this is amazing. Both of you, totally appreciate it. And watch for more questions from us.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad.
Thanks, Chinny. I appreciate you and all of your friends being on the webinar tonight. That's great. That's great. Folks, we are coming up on time, which usually spurs people to ask questions right at the end. So feel free to still unmute yourself or put that in the chat line. But we so appreciate you being here tonight. If there's one thing, there's not just one thing, it's me. But if there's two things that I would like for you to take away from tonight is, one, ask questions. Get out there, and if you don't know what questions to ask somebody what questions I should ask, right? You can contact the college admissions, whether if you're an admitted student or if you're a prospective student, call them and just start a conversation, find out what's going on with them. You don't have to just be an admitted student to have those conversations, right? So call them, start asking questions, call them back when you get more. You want to make sure that you get the answers for your personal situation, for what's going on for you, not what's going on for someone else. That may spur a question, but you want to find out how that's going to affect you regardless of what age group you are in, right? If you're a freshman or if you're a graduating senior or graduated senior. And so that's the one thing. The other thing, and I love that Rachel brings this up, is take a deep breath, right? Have some fun. This is going to work out. Yes, there are some challenges and complications that we have not experienced before, both on the admission side, right? And on the getting into college side of things, and how can I do this, and how can I make the most of my time, right? Take a deep breath, right? Everybody is going through this at some level. And so people understand that, right? And so do what is right for you. Ask those questions, get the answer so you can make an informed decisions. So sometimes asking the question informs you whether you should have anxiety about that or not. You're like, oh, I guess I don't have to do that. Great, I don't have to worry about it. Or I do have to worry about it, and here's the deadline, right? So then you can get into all the deadlines. That's my next thing, but I'm not gonna talk about it today. But those are really the two things, is one, ask the questions, and two, trust that you're in the right place. When you ask those questions, you can then take a deep breath, right? And take a step back. So there's one question on here I'm gonna answer, or two questions that just came up really quick, and then let Rachel do her ending remarks as well. So somebody's asking, what are your opinions on the BSMD? So that's the joint medical degree. That's going to be a very personal. I think that's a very special student that can take on that stress of all of that and what that looks like. If you are that student, I think that that's a really great option. But for a lot of students, that's not going to be the right path. So again, kind of dig into that and figure that part out. So the last question here from my friend Jose: how do we find tour for colleges and universities? For example, the one Rachel is representing. So I'll let Rachel answer that question.
So for us, you can go to du.edu/virtual visits. So I would say that every school, as Megan mentioned as well, has something virtual and online tour options these days. So truly, the wonderful world of Google, you know, the name of the school and virtual visits or virtual tours, and you'll get some good stuff. So I know Megan mentioned a place that has sort of a kind of a clearinghouse of some, but I think truly just kind of doing your good old Google search. And yes, I am happy to put it into the chat.
Is it virtual visits? Is at the end, Rachel?
I'm double checking.
Okay.
Like, which version is it?
This is what it is.
But yes, I will get it up before
Perfect.
we finish up here.
And then Catherine has a question: are AP classes helpful for resumes? Again, I think that the short answer is yes, and we want to make sure that the student is meeting their academic challenge level. That if students are, this is my opinion, Rachel, you can let me know what you're thinking, but if students are performing at a C level in an AP class, you probably don't want to be in that AP class, right? You want to, that doesn't seem like it's fitting. If you are performing at a C level and because you're not trying and showing up, like that's a different conversation that we can have, right? But if you are doing your very best and you're showing up and getting a C average in that class, it's not really meeting your academic level. So you want to make sure that you are challenging yourself, but not so much that it's going to have a significantly negative impact on your overall GPA, and that can have a stressful and anxiety producing benefit or not benefit, side effect of not doing well in classes. So again, yes, and we want to make sure that students are meeting and just above challenging with their academic level. Is that?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yep. Right. Yeah, sure. The ideal is take AP classes and get A's. But right. That's not the reality for everybody in any capacity. And so finding that balance, working with the high school counselor to really figure out, okay, how do I take a mix of classes and I take the AP classes that I'm really good at and I want to, you know, challenge myself in. And then I'm going to take some regular classes where it's really hard, because no human is perfect and fantastic at everything. And colleges know that, right? There are humans on the other side of all of this process that have gone through it as well. So yeah, finding that balance.
Yes. Perfect. Everyone, we are a couple minutes over time, so I'm going to give you back your evening. Thank you so very, very much for being a part of this. Rachel, thank you so much for your time, your talent, for joining us, not once, but twice at the Heartland Institute. Really appreciate everything that you have brought to tonight's webinar and just to the field of higher education and admissions in general. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. It's fun to share.
Absolutely. Everyone, thank you so much. If everything goes well, this will have been recorded. If it didn't, you know, what is this emoji, right, that people put in their text messages? So like, I'm doing the best I can. So hopefully it recorded. You can find it on our Facebook probably in the next couple of days. If there's anything that you need from me, you can email us at hyphecpp@hyphe-usa.org, or you can email me directly at megan.pickett@hyphe-usa.org. Thank you all so very much. As always, I wish you continued health and safety, and we will see you all very soon. Thanks so much. Thanks again, Rachel. Everybody have a great night.
Good night.
Bye.